Welcome back to Plaster by Simpson. Today's episode 7 with Chris Lip.
Listen, today, exciting episode for me, Chris. You and I have known each other forever. Not only have we known each other forever, I consider you one of my big mentors throughout my whole career. So I'm super excited you're
Thank
here.
you, man. Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure being with you guys. I'm glad I could be here in Birmingham to be part of the podcast and talk a little bit about our history together and
Yeah.
kind of the state of the industry today. And as I'm moving to the end of my career now, I've got some nice perspective on where things are.
Yeah.
You have a really unique perspective, and so you and I met about 1998 because I'd just come into the industry,
Yeah,
and you were with Grace at the time
I was.
doing fireproofing.
Yep.
I was as green as any human's ever been in construction,
Yep.
and you taught me everything I needed to know about fireproofing, and then you retaught me probably 5 more times, as it took me a while to learn it. And then you kind of jumped through the industry, really, all the way from that to intumescent,
Yep.
and then
Yeah.
we learned a bunch about intumescent, and then you jumped into the lathing world,
Yep. I did.
and
I
went from
did.
there. And so I think you have a really unique career path, as
Yeah.
it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that in the building products industry, on the manufacturing side, where I've spent the majority of my career, um, I have a pretty good understanding of lots of the specification book, if you will. From Division 4 to Division 7, Division 9, specialty stuff in 10,
Yeah.
um, Division 5 now with cold form steel framing. So I have what I think is a pretty good working knowledge of those and how they interrelate, understanding the trades that support those particular areas and sections, um, and then of course just always naturally gravitated to the contracting side of it and the mechanics of putting it all together and building it out.
Mhm.
So kind of empathize with that, if you will. So always when I've worked with design people or specification people, I always tried to bring that perspective in, help them understand that, while they don't specify means and methods, they have to take it into account in
Yeah.
what they specify and verbalize. So um, as I look back on that now, I feel like I'm able to really add some additional value to my current employer at Clark Dietrich and help them see some opportunities and some places that are emerging,
Yeah.
as well as diversify a bit and do some things that are outside just traditional cold form steel framing. So,
And I will say, most of what you just said is understated. I think you're considered an expert by most people in many of our products now. So I think that part is it. I will say, what you bring to Clark Dietrich to me, and really everywhere you've ever been, is your passion. You've always had so much passion and so much energy for
yeah.
what we do, right? And so it's easy to buy into it.
Yep.
And you also you always did architectural sales,
Yeah.
but you always kind of were in contractors' offices teaching.
Yep.
And I think I think that's kind of where your passion just kind of spilled over into the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I love um, the concept of teaching, the mentorship piece. I mean, it's really cool even sitting here today with you and with Griffin, because um, I do remember those early days when you first showed up at your father-in-law's facility. Um, in fact, I think at that time maybe it was one or two buildings right here in this general area,
Across the
and
tracks.
it looked like the place hadn't changed since your father-in-law George had gotten it from his father at that point when it was
Yeah,
OG Simpson.
that's
Yeah.
right.
I mean, we're
OG.
talking paneling on the walls and floors that looked like they probably got laid down in the early '50s,
Carpet that
and
was stained with the smell of coffee.
lots of stained carpets. Yeah. So and I remember walking in the door there, and you were kind of in the back and kind of hunched over a drawing board, and the blueprints were all laid out there. And I said, "Hi, Richard," and you said, "Yeah, I'm Richard Riley." And I said, "Well, I'm Chris Little." I said, "I'm with Grace Construction Products." And you're like, "Yeah, I'm starting to learn about these fireproofing systems and all this." He said, "I'm still just not really sure about, you know, kind of how all of this is laid out and how do you determine what hourly ratings what and the thicknesses. And I think I turned around to you and I picked up a book like this. It was
Yeah.
a much smaller book at that time, and it was all orange.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, you got to learn every bit of this.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to learn the front of it. You got to understand how it's organized and laid out. You got to know where to find the ratings and how to look at the thicknesses, and then determine what the calculations are on the still." So we had some fun early on, and I was very poignant about that. And to your point, I am passionate about it.
Uh-huh.
I'm passionate because I enjoy it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And I really hopefully been able to kind of convey that energy over
Oh, yeah.
to not only yourself but even now with Griffin. I remember when Griffin first came in and you and I were talking. And I said, "Hey, I'd really like to see Griffin go through this training class the trade association has. I think it'll be really good for him to do that
Yeah.
because he's coming in with not necessarily a lot of background on the big picture of the business, and I think this is good." And I tried to sell it to you conceptually, and sure enough, he did go through the AWCI Emerging Leaders
Yeah.
training and
Yeah.
did that for a year. And I think he walked out with a better understanding of the industry at large and
Sure.
made some great connections through that. So
Yeah.
I do have passion for the business.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm trying to coach younger people, so I really feel like now, my legacy is transferring my understanding and insights and
Mhm.
knowledge to the next generation for it to carry on.
Yeah.
And
I will tell you, at that point in time in my career, when I met you, I was in the kitchen and I had a metal folding chair. And they would give me one set of drawings at a time, and I'd roll it on the kitchen table, and I worked in the kitchen table. And when you brought me that ASTM book, I mean the UL book,
Yeah,
I was so lost because George and Mike's theory was you just learn. We'll give you a set of drawings, you just go figure it out. And so I would look at it, and I would open those tests, and they would just be like Greek. And
yeah,
but you showed me that front table and those front couple of pages,
yeah,
and man, it was like the clouds parting,
yeah,
and I knew what to study. You showed me what to study, what to learn,
yeah,
what to take in,
yeah,
and so it became really my favorite product became fireproofing because I understood it more than anything else at the time.
yeah. Right,
As I went.
it's
right.
funny, the first time I ever talked to you on the phone, hung up and I went into his office. I was like, "I just talked to this awesome guy named Chris Lowe." He's like, "Oh, that guy told me everything I know about fireproofing." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "He would sit in the kitchen with me and go over textbooks and just teach me everything that I know about fireproofing."
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, okay." And then finally meeting you face to face, I
yeah,
think you went over it with me a little bit too.
yeah.
The first time we ever sat down because I was taking off some fireproofing job. You're like, "Well, break out that UL book. Let's look at it real quick."
I love it. I
The
love it.
best
Yeah,
part for me is since I haven't done a lot of fireproofing in the last 15 years, and most of the guys that work for us are not, have not been here 20 years. They all think I don't know anything about fireproofing. And it's hilarious. When they walk around the office, they'll be like, "Oh, we gotta find somebody who knows something about fireproofing." I'm like, I did some of that at one time.
Yeah.
That was kind of my product for a couple of years.
well, and
You know.
early on, I'm talking really, back in the mid '80s. I mean, GE Simpson, the
Hmm.
former company, I mean, that was one of their fortes.
Oh yeah.
They were one of the few in the state of Alabama that did that trade
Uh huh.
uniquely and specifically. So, I've got pictures of a project that you guys did in Huntsville
Hmm.
that I was on. It was a school, and you had a bunch of block masonry walls that had structural steel aligned in it. So the block wasn't load bearing; it was all partition wall separations. But
Right.
the steel fell inside that rated wall system, and so because you guys had the skill set with your team in the traditional plastering trade, you were able to lath, corner bead
Hmm.
a lot of those columns and marry them into that masonry
Hmm.
and plaster them over with more heavy, high density materials that were Portland cement based,
Yeah.
and actually maintain the rating and made the systems look almost monolithic, almost smooth, because you were really leaning hard into your plastering knowledge with a fire protection system.
Yeah.
And I've got photographs of that.
Yeah.
In fact, the
That's
guys
pretty
doing
cool.
that work. So
That's pretty
I'll make
cool.
sure to
Was
get
that a
those for you.
Chambers?
Yeah.
Was that Carlos that did the what?
No, back then we had fireproofing crews. You had a
Yeah.
whole fireproofing division. What most people don't really understand anymore is plastering was fireproofing.
Yeah.
And so the reason GE Simpson did fireproofing was
Yeah.
we did plastering and
Yeah.
it became fireproofing. And so you just had this kind of some of your fireproofing crews specialized in, I mean, some of your plastering crews kind of specialized in fireproofing, just
Yeah.
became fireproofers. And at that time, it was really us and All South.
Right.
We're the only 2 games in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And if it was over 2,500 bags, we would let All South have
Yeah.
it. And if it's under 2,500, we wanted it. And so it was a great niche for the market for us and for them. And
Yeah.
it was
Well,
great.
and when it was specialty finishes, unique finishes,
Mhm.
aesthetic requirements, Simpson tended to be the guys getting that work because it required attention to detail in terms of the aesthetics that
Mhm.
really lent well to your all's, skill set as far as a contractor.
Right.
For them, it was more about the volume type work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, people lean towards what they were good at. And even in today's contracting business, both at the sub level, at the general level, people tend to lean into what they are strong in. We
Right.
call it the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Where's your sweet spot? Where's the work that fits you well?
Mhm.
And you tend to go, we're going to go after that
Yeah.
because we feel like we can not only do that and execute it well, but we can make up ground if we need to.
Yeah.
In that space.
And so it's funny for us. We've done fireproofing since 1948, and we still it makes up about 9 to 10% of our business a year. And we have people call probably on a monthly basis, say, "Hey, do y'all fireproof?" It's like,
I'm always shocked with people that are like, "You do waterproofing
yes,
too?
yeah.
And fireproofing?" I'm like, "Yeah."
So it's always funny is we've done it forever, and yet
Yeah.
people call and ask all the time. And so
Yeah.
I will say this: my first year in the field, George put me on the energy building downtown, Brassfield job, fireproofing. And at that point in time, I hadn't even read the UL book. I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And he puts me on a crew with Myron Lumpkin and one other older guy. I cannot remember his name, but I'm just sweeping up, right? And that stuff's heavy and slurry and it's wet. It was MK6,
Oh yeah.
so it was heavy and wet. And I'm back there with the shovel, brooming and shoveling into a bend. And so I look up, and these 2 guys are arguing. And the guy with the spray nozzle throws it over his shoulder and starts arguing. And they're screaming, hollering, arguing. And I look up, and he's got fireproofing up to about his mid back as it's spraying on the ground. And I can't shovel fast enough. I thought, this is for the birds. We got to do something different here.
Somebody turn off that.
Yeah,
touch
I was
over
like,
there.
and we
Turn
were
it
2
off.
stories up, so the guy running the machine was down at the bottom on the low roof. And I remember just thinking, I'm gonna clean forever, and these guys are never gonna stop arguing about it all.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, those old school crews were funny too.
Sure, sure. And of course the trade itself, and again, I'm not in the trade day in and day out, but it has really refined quite a bit.
Yeah.
That it's a lot more equipment is refined.
Mm.
It's not nearly as bulky. Things are a lot more agile, a lot more easy to connect in,
Yeah.
get it primed up, ready to roll,
Right.
as opposed to today. And then of course the evolution of endomestic coatings.
Yeah.
Right? The endomestic coatings really revolutionized that segment of the business because it's turned really a paint finish, if you
Mhm.
will, into a fire rated material
Mhm.
that you can apply to steel, accentuate the steel, and make it part of the architectural design and still fire rated, which,
Mhm.
has really, I think the net overall has been an increase in the use of fire protection coatings as a
Right.
broad category because of endomestic
I
paint and coatings.
I agree completely, and we've reduced thicknesses, of fireproof spray
Yeah.
applied fireproofing too. So
Mhm.
between those 2, we don't see it as probably a big as part of our business as it was,
Mhm.
but it still runs. Like I said, 8 or 9%. Some years 10% of what we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great
Yeah.
products and good knowledge.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It makes a good package for our clients to kind of be able to access that as well.
Right.
So,
Right.
You talking about the AWCI, you obviously helped mentor me into the AWCI. And you 2 are kind of co-board member, co-chairman of a lot of stuff. AWCI, ASTM related. Do y'all want to talk about that at all? I mean, you got the
Yeah.
stucco chair.
well, let's go first. Let's say, Chris, take me from fireproofing to your exterior clad journey, because that's about a 20-year kind of
Yeah, it
journey
is.
there.
It is. I do want to come back to Griffin's point. We'll
Yeah.
talk a bit about AWCI and
Yeah.
what we're doing there and kind of the advocacy of that for the industry at large. But yeah, so when I finished college, I graduated from Auburn University in 1987. I, and got out. I always knew I wanted to be in some sort of technical sales. That was kind of my thinking.
Right.
I graduated in industrial operations management. So my background was in manufacturing from an academic standpoint and manufacturing efficiencies. Um, and so uh, I had started interviewing right out of college with York Air Conditioning,
Mm.
and
Nice.
they hired me out of school into what they called their graduate engineering training program. And I hired on with York. I was in out off in Pelham, off Valleydale Road, where they were based initially
Oh
there
yeah.
in the Birmingham area.
Hmm.
And I was working with their big equipment. So we're talking chillers, air handlers, the big stuff in the commercial side of things. And then when I finished up that preliminary training, I went through their engineering training program that was located in York, Pennsylvania.
Mm.
So I'll never forget. It was the summer of 1988. I had a little Toyota Celica was my college car. I was really into biking, all this passion is going on. I
Right.
was a bicycle rider. I'm like, oh man, I got to take my bike up there. I'm going into
Right.
eastern Pennsylvania. I'm going to ride through the hills up there. And
Poconos.
that's right. I'm going to ride up through that space. So I loaded my bike on the back of this little Toyota Celica. Didn't even have cruise control. This is the
Oh
days
yeah.
where cruise control was a real premium. So I didn't have that. So I had to basically put the foot down and hold it and drive it for 10 and a half hours
Mm.
to York, Pennsylvania with my bike dragging on the back of my little Toyota. And we lived up there for the summer and went through this engineering training program. And it was a really great formalized program.
Hmm.
Not only did we do, the engineering piece of that, which, I had done some of that academically, but not the deep dive that you did in that for mechanical engineering,
Hmm.
which was air conditioning and so forth that went with that. But did there, which included developing a program, presentation skills, presenting to an owner, kind of, putting the whole value package together, learning how to do that.
Hmm.
And these are just really great, non-academic skills that you need to have
Yep.
to really communicate in our business and work in our business. So
Absolutely.
when I got to the end of that program, I was dating a gal pretty steady who still today is my
Still.
wife 37 years later.
Congratulations on
And
that.
initially they said, well, we're going to probably send you to the Atlanta office to work. And I'm like, okay, cool. We'll go to Atlanta and I'll be good with that. You know what? And we can just kind of keep dating. It's all going to be fine. We'll just keep dating. She's like, I don't like that. I don't like the sound of that. I don't like this keep dating stuff. We've been doing that already. But she didn't let on to that or whatever. And so we kinda went along, and about a week before I was finished, the York folks called me into the office, closed the door, management call. I'm like, "Uh-oh, what's up?" And they said, we've had some things change around personnel. We really need you to we'd like you to go to our San Antonio, Texas office,
Mm.
and we'd like you to work out of there. We have a big client out there in the University of Texas, and they're building a health science center there in San Antonio, and we are going to be supplying all the AC for that. In addition to that, we are finishing up the Marriott Riverwalk project where we've put in all the chillers and air handlers and fan coil units in all the rooms, and we need somebody to oversee that work getting done. So we have a personnel need, decided you're the guy to go do that. So I walked out of that meeting. I said, "Sure, I'm on board. Of course, I'm on board. I'm employed.
Right.
I got to go where I got to go." And I walked out of that meeting. I remember saying to myself, "I'm I'm not sure I know where San Antonio is. I know that's where the Alamo is, but I'm not really sure if I know where it is." So I had to go back, and that was a day where you didn't have a phone to look at, so you
Right.
just open up a big map.
Rand McNally.
And I went, "Oh, it's in the center of that state. I don't know anybody there." And I'm not going there by myself, so I'd better get engaged. Uh, so anyway, kind of a funny story, with my wife and I kid. We said, "Yeah, that was the Lord's way of saying, now you need to get engaged here,
Exactly.
Hurry up.
and so I'm going to have to push you to make that happen." So um, I finished that program up in August. I got an engagement ring while I was in Philadelphia, downtown on Jewelers Road.
Mm.
So
Nice.
found a good
So,
spot for that. Brought that ring back with me, was gonna stop at her hometown in Natchez, Mississippi, where she,
The great
was
town of
was,
Natchez,
yeah,
Mississippi.
and, was gonna stop there to see her before on my way out, and, of course, stopping there also included the proposal, and
Right.
so I proposed, she said yes, and I said, "Great, you take care of coordinate the wedding, I'm heading to San Antonio." and I left and went to San Antonio. So anyway, I was in San Antonio, worked on that Riverwalk project, and you guys know that Marriott
Oh yeah.
building there right
Oh
down on the
yeah.
Riverwalk. Worked on some of that UT Health Science Center work. Really learned a lot there in about an 18-month period. In the midst of that, York had made a couple acquisitions, got cash strapped, um, needed to lay off some people. They laid off rookies, which I
Right.
was a
Right.
rookie.
Yeah.
And so 10 of us were laid off. And I decided I was married at that point. Got married in February of '88. And so I realized, hey, you know what? I came out here for the job. All my connections are back east. I need to get back to the roots. So I moved, relocated back to Birmingham. Uh, Moved in with my parents. We're talking humble pie here. Moved in with my parents, and we lived there with them until I was able to land a job with Grace. I got on
Mhm.
board with Grace, and that's when shortly after that met you in like
Mhm.
89, 90, or maybe a little bit later than that. But started working the business there, grew into that part of it, stayed with them, had a really good career with Grace. They started a masonry products business and asked me to join that new group. They had developed some admixtures for concrete and
Yep.
block for water protection. They had built some uh, membrane flashing materials you guys are familiar
Oh
with
yeah.
called
Sure.
permabarrier,
Yeah.
and rubberized asphalt technology with sheet membrane. Probably use it in some of your work today.
Absolutely.
Um, and we put some of the first of that material on in the Olympic Village in
Huh.
Atlanta
Oh
back
wow.
in 1996
It's pretty cool.
from the first work done. And so I stayed with them up until 99.
Mhm.
In 99, they brought in a new manager over me, a couple of years older than me. So he was really good and still a very good friend of mine today. And I knew that that was kind of my glass ceiling there.
Mhm.
Um, so if I wanted to grow outside of that, I was probably going to have to make a change. And at that point, I started looking at potentially repping or doing some other things as independent. And I contacted Carboline and said, "Are you guys looking for any independent people?" And they said, "Nope, but we sure could use a new guy that knows the business
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you." So that eventually turned into a recruiting. I went on board with them. They had just brought an intermessic coating over from the UK called Nullifier,
Mhm.
and they brought Nullifier to the US, but needed to get it fire rated. Went through the fire rating process. I came on board with them, showed them how to market that, and get that into the commercial market, which was really not their early ideas of how they would do it.
Mhm.
So it really kind of changed their plan on how to go to market with that. And of course, today Corbeline's a very sizable supplier into that segment of the
Absolutely.
business. So I was with them for about 5 years, uh, and that was around 2002, right after the 9/11 events and all of that that went on with our country and concerns about terrorism. Safety was a really big high level component at that point, and I had a buddy that had worked at Hilti,
Mhm.
Hmm.
who had left Hilti and gone to work for a security fence company that made a crash resistant, high threat, high security fence system.
Huh.
And they had been marketing and developing that for the government, for the DoD, the federal institutions, U.S. Embassy, and said, "Hey, we need somebody to come over and help specify that." So I made a leap of faith, jumped over, went to work in that segment. Um, Really cut my teeth into the whole security side of
Mhm.
the industry, which was completely new for me. And long and short of it is, I was with that about 18 months. We started to realize that the federal government, as much as they needed crash resistance, high anti-terrorism fencing, they only needed it specifically where they needed it because they weren't going to pay $140 a foot for it.
Right.
Mhm.
So they tailed that back, if you will. The scopes reduced. It
Right.
just the need wasn't there like it was. So we kind of agreed to part ways, all amicable, all good.
Yeah.
And that's when I got on shortly after that with Amico,
Mhm.
Alabama Metal Industries,
Yep.
based here out of Birmingham.
Yep.
And I hired on as a sales rep with them in the field for about 5 years. The guy that was kind of the technical support guy there, a guy named Gary Malon, who
Sure.
you
We
have
know
heard
Gary.
of,
Yeah.
retired shortly after that, and I was able to move into that role
Mhm.
as their technical support person. Worked there at Amico for 9 years and really developed my better knowledge and understanding of lathing and plastering. Early, already had some competency with cementitious fire protection coatings
Right.
because they're basically similar in how they're put
Yeah.
on. But between that and then really diving into a book here that Gary had written, it's
Hmm.
called the Metal Lath Handbook, which is really nothing more than what I would call cliff notes of one of the ASTM standards.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
really kind of dialed into that and detailed that out. I used that as kind of a basis to really learn deep, and I decided I was going to really kind of define my career at that point around really having a technical competency and understanding of that, and being able to coach and teach that both at the spec level and at the contractor level.
Yep.
And so I use that as kind of the basis. This book has not yet been rewritten. I'm thinking about in post retirement potentially
Rewriting.
updating and
Oh, wow.
rewriting
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
book. So more to come on that. We'll
Yeah.
see how that goes.
So I would tell you this: Gary had a relationship with our company
Yep.
for years, and I consider myself really lucky because Gary would come in and have lunch with us before you got there, and then after he retired, even he would come in from time to time. He wrote the other, the seven deadly sins
Yep.
of lathing,
Yeah.
um, and he used to just kind of come do lunch and then just kind of stream of consciousness talk about what was going on. And man, he was the guy
Yeah.
in lathing at that time, and so much to learn from him.
Yeah.
And that book is one Mike Kennedy told me that's a book you're going to have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was one of my library books he had. And both books you got were staples on my shelf.
Yeah.
And I always considered myself really lucky just to have gotten to interact with Gary
Sure.
when I did, just because
Yeah.
that kind of knowledge is just incredible to have.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great place to learn that. Like I said, the book's been dated some since then. It
Yeah,
hasn't been updated in almost 20 years, so
yeah,
it needs a refresh. But the fundamentals that are in there are still applicable today,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Applicable to the trade today in a larger way. So that was kind of part of that early learning.
Hmm.
I was with them, through I don't know 2013,
Hmm.
and in 13 um, Clark uh, Steel
Uh-huh.
out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and Dietrich Metal Industries merged in 2011. They came together as a
Mm.
single entity. So they had some lathing and plastering capabilities, manufacturing wise, but they didn't have a lot of in house competency on that.
Hmm.
So I had gotten to know a lot of their people through ASTM, which is where I was a voting member of that and
Yeah.
into the committees for lathing and plastering. And through that, um, I began a conversation with them that ultimately turned me into coming on board with them.
Hmm.
So I now manage the category for what they call exterior cladding, and it includes all the lathing and plastering materials, the structural wire, welded
Hmm.
wire lath that you
Hmm.
Which is
guys are
incredible.
familiar with.
Yeah.
That's in their portfolio,
Hmm.
and we also have some other rain screen and flashing materials
Hmm.
that are starting to emerge as use in this business now
Hmm.
too. So it's been a very varied and diverse career.
Yeah.
It's taken me to lots of different places, but it's been able to build some friendships with guys like you for many, many years,
Yeah.
and just trust between us. That
Hmm.
trust is such an important part of this business at whatever level you're working
Right.
in. That you
Yeah.
can, you know, believe in what you're being told. You can have confidence in it, and someone will do what they say they're going to do, which
Yeah.
is, that all seems pretty fundamental, but it's hard to find that
Yeah.
group
Yeah.
that, will deliver on that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of, finding your way here. So, um,
We were talking earlier about the difference in the industry a little bit becoming more transactional than relational.
yep.
And I think it's one thing that you've always been is very relational really with all your clients and us included.
Yeah.
And that it's when you have that, it's so vital to us as applicators
Hmm.
to be able to call someone and say, tell me what's happening here. What do I need to do to make this right? Because our job is to take care of our clients. And so to have that trust, be able to call and say, okay, even with Griffin's got a problem. Call Chris. Tell me what he says. And
Right.
that you're right. That is such a vital component. And used to early in my career, I had George,
Hmm.
who knew everything in the world.
Yep.
And you had Mike, who knew just as much,
Yep.
even though they disagreed, which was kind of fun to watch, like fireworks from time to time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then had guys like Gary Malin rolling around
Yeah.
that you had access to. guys like Griffin don't have access to those guys that much anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And so having you interact with Griffin to me is the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when Mike Kendi retired. We kept him one day a week for probably 4 years, maybe
Mhm.
5 years, just because him sitting there having a cup of coffee telling stories would teach you more than most teachers could teach you.
No
Yep.
question.
You know what I'm saying? That knowledge transfer is so hard to get. And so,
Yeah.
Mike is a workhorse anyway. So he would bid fireproofing all day because he liked it, and so he would bid fireproofing all day, but just really his value came in the 10 minutes between bids.
Yeah.
Trolling around the
Just
office.
trolling around the office
Yeah.
telling stories, and most of the stories that my guess is if you told the young people today, no one believed them.
Right.
Like no one would ever act like that. No one could ever get away with that anymore because it's such a cleaner industry full of written letters and all that other stuff versus the old
Right.
school, you know,
I remember
pounding fists on tables.
my first day at Simpson, I walked through our back door, which is downstairs, and directly ahead of me was his office at the time. And he's giving somebody the business on the phone, just ripping them up. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And then I listened to it for a couple minutes, and then he goes, "And then call me back." And he was leaving a voicemail, and he was screaming at this dude over the voicemail, and I was like, "Is that what I'm getting myself into?" And
But
it was
Mike had a
tough.
really unique ability. Mike's one of the few guys in the world, especially in construction, that could tear you up
Yeah,
and then pat you on the back and say, let's go have lunch."
yeah,
And
yeah,
it was all over. For him, it was the moment in the trailer and what he needed to say and do. But then you left and had lunch, and there was no bad feelings
yeah.
amongst it. And today it's a little different because one bad email, you could have
People get butthurt.
25 more emails that you
But
just
isn't that how families kind of get built, right? I mean, you
yeah
think about your own family, you think about your parents. You get mad at them. You're
Right,
like, I'm
right.
mad at you, but you know what? I still got to live with you. I
Yeah,
love
right
you,
gotta
and
patch together.
and with your brothers and sisters. I mean, you get head banging mad at each other, right?
yeah
But you work through it and you move on,
Yep,
right?
yeah
So, and I think really to some degree we do that as in the building industry too. I
yeah,
mean, I remembered many times back in the days where Simpson would quote something and I would have maybe helped them with something or
yeah
whatever, and next thing you know, they quoted my competitor's material.
right,
yeah right
I'd come in and see Mike and I'd say, What happened? What did you do?"
right.
He's like, "Well, we looked at it and this, and this, and we just felt like it was better to do this one with fiber than do it with cementitious or whatever because of that." And I'm like, "Okay."
right
Yeah,
And I mean, so you
yeah
just gotta try to roll with it. But by doing that, it I think the takeaway was, okay, they looked at me and said, "Hey, you can handle defeat. You
right
can come back for more.
yeah,
That says a lot about your credibility
hmm
and your reputation and your character.
right
So,
yeah,
those are the kind of things that are stepping stones that, help you build. And those
yeah
are things, hopefully Griffin's learning in the
yeah,
next generation, that
I think the one thing you said in that was interesting, and we talked about this along the way, which is used to when those situations happened. Again, you had the relationship to go sit down with a guy and be like, "Hey, what's happening here? Why did this happen here?" I think what Griffin runs into more often is complete ghosting. All of a sudden, they disappear. You can't find them. You know what's
mhm,
happening, and then that leaves the bad taste
yeah,
in your mouth. And I think you know, and that happens. And sometimes people get busy, but you see patterns in certain groups and people where you're like, "Uh oh, this is," and that I think below 35 generation has that tendency anyway.
yeah,
And I think a lot of times we talk about it all the time within our office, like this is about relationship building, and you can't build them if you don't talk to them, and you
yeah,
can't build them if you
so
don't
true.
do that. And so we even have certain clients where we're like, we don't know, we want to bid them a whole bunch, not because they're bad people or because it's not working out, but because we can't communicate through the chain.
Uh-huh.
yeah,
And so, even for us with clients, a lot of times I look at like who high up in the chain can I call if there's a problem and get a fair, honest answer,
Mm,
right? To me, and I'll call them out in an instant. Say that was one of the special sauces for Brassfield
mm,
for us. I know everybody has their own experience with different people. For us, we ever had a problem, I could call guys high up the chain. I might not like the answer,
yeah,
but A, they would explain their answer, and B, you at least got their position. And it allows you to kind of like you talk about, have the problem and move forward with the relationship.
that's right.
yeah.
That's
And
right.
that's I think it's being lost a little bit in today's construction market.
It
Well, and we
is.
You
talk
know.
a lot about like the exterior cladding side of the industry in itself is so niche that
Really.
it's almost like a family in itself. So
Yeah.
being able to come back, like you're saying, and work through it with someone is important because you're gonna bump back into them in the next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and depending on how they build that thing out, it could be a different set of characters. There may be one or two of the people that are common or
Yeah.
Mhm.
germane across the board, but there may be a couple of new ones in the
Right.
conversation.
Right.
But
Right.
I think transparency is really important.
Mhm.
I think people gravitate to transparency in terms of if they believe it's sincere and
Mhm.
honest, they go, "Okay, you're going to be straight up with me,
Right.
Right.
and if you're straight up with me, I can at least, begin the dialogue, whether it's on the supply side, whether it's on the contracting side, sub to general, general to sub, transparency. I mean, for Griffin, as opposed to getting ghosted, if somebody will call him back and said, "Hey, you know what? We quoted it down. We had a guy come in. He was
Yeah.
10% less than you at the end of the bid. We took his number. We're going to roll with him."
Right.
We
He
talk
could go away and go, "Okay, I got beat."
Yeah.
Right.
We talked about that in the last episode where we're just like, it's almost better getting the no than no answer at all.
Sure.
It's, the communication. And we were talking about generational differences.
Yeah.
And seeing your books kind of also reminds me, it's funny, your generation had a library of information to go read through. My generation, we just look it up on a laptop. I mean, it's just sitting right there,
But his
So,
books you can't look up on a laptop, probably. They're all, I mean,
yeah.
Gary Malin's book would be hard to find.
Yeah.
What were the critical books? I know you brought some other. What are the other critical ones you learned from?
So a couple others that over the years have been helpful. This one is was put out by USG. It's called the Construction Gypsum Handbook. This
Yep.
was the original copy when they first published and printed that. Um, this is not the most current copy, but this is one that USG has done. This was the sixth edition against that. And
Mm-hmm.
as you can see, they included RS means construction cost data
Yep.
into this one.
RS
So
means.
this is really Division 9 uh, for the most part,
Right.
and a lot of cold form steel framing and support that has to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really well done. It's written well.
Yeah.
USG is really known for their technical knowledge and expertise, and those are just really helpful books as reference guides, as well as just more deeper learning about how things are put together.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it may seem old school today with some of the newer products and
Yeah.
technologies, but I still feel like it's still pretty relevant. It's pretty helpful. And I think Richard, you said you had copies of these.
I have copies of both of those.
Yeah.
Again, Mike Kennedy's library building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a really an old one here. This is a classic. It's called The Manual of Lathing and Plastering. Um, this book was written by a guy named John Deal. He was an AIA architect, and it was copywritten in 1960.
Wow.
So this is
I have that.
lathing and plastering from days gone by. Okay, back when really right when the advent of sheetrock had come along.
Mhm.
Drywall was the advent of sheetrock, right?
Right.
Wet wall was how walls were historically built. They were lath and plaster. It
Right.
was a gypsum plaster finish. So if you ever go back into an old building and you hit the wall and it's really rock hard, chances are it's gypsum plaster.
Yeah.
And when you go to demo it, you'll see it's a lot harder to demo than it is for sheetrock.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So that book is an interesting intersection, really, to even do our conversation. The back half of the book is all fire rating plaster partitions.
That's right.
I have that. That's another one of Mike Kennedy's books we had to have. And
Yeah.
so I remember flipping through the back of that thing and saying, what is all this stuff?
Yeah.
Because it's where you get what used to be your UL book. It was your plaster assemblies that
It
got
was.
fire rating.
It was. It was. And a
So,
lot of this has kind of morphed into now what they call the Gypsum Association's
Mhm.
Fire Construction Manual. The Portland Cement Association has now started to adopt some of that. But this is some of the early conversation, if you will, about it, some of the early knowledge and
Mhm.
technology, and from there it's transferred into
Yeah.
other spaces. But that's a
yeah,
good one.
that's a great book.
And then this last one here is called Lath and Plaster Section Data and Assemblies. And this one is really kind of a, a visual aid to
Mhm.
different finishes
Yeah.
and different coatings, how they look. And then as you get on over, it gets into how cold roll channel systems are built,
Mm.
how the wall systems
I
are.
wrote that
Some
out.
really nice isometrics,
Yeah.
some very unique systems. Again, likely we're not building buildings this way today,
Right.
Right.
but we can learn so much from the past.
It
Who,
looks
Right?
like
who
it
put
looks
that
like
out? I've never seen that one.
Yeah.
it looks like Thomas Edison put
Yeah.
it out.
So this is I mean this one really is kind of broken down with various components to it. When you get to the back of it, Let's see who was so I can see. This was put out by the Texas Lathing and Plastering Contractors
Wow.
Oh, the
Association
TLPCA.
Wow.
in June of 1971.
Wow. That's
Wow,
awesome.
71.
it's crazy.
So, I was just barely on the scene. Richard was not on the
That
scene.
was, that
So,
was a
uh,
little away.
so that there's some more really old classic information.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm not tapping that daily now, but I
Right.
still, have them on the shelf. I
Yeah.
pull them off occasionally just for knowledge and learning. But today we're seeing, on the lath and plaster business, we're seeing an all-time high demand, Richard, and
Hmm.
still people wanting to design with plaster
Right.
and stucco, um, like the look of it,
Hmm.
appreciate the sustainability attributes of it.
Hmm.
Okay. I mean, it's steel, it's metal, if you will. There, steel.
Yeah.
It's cement, which is recyclable in itself. I mean, so there is those that are really into sustainable attributes like that. The
Hmm.
fact that you can do lots of colors, textures, and finishes. You can do unique shapes.
Yeah.
Really still appeals to the design people.
Hmm.
The challenges are how do you get that wall built and build it in such a way that it will withstand the weather
Right.
Hmm.
wherever the weather is,
Hmm.
okay? Whether it's Pacific Northwest or Florida on the coast or the Atlantic seaboard or Midwest Kansas City, right? I mean, all of these are totally different environments.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
And then you take a product that is pretty common across all of those and say, can they all withstand those same environments? And I
Yeah.
think what we're starting to learn and really trying to integrate into both the trade association like AWCI, which we'll talk about in a minute, but
Hmm.
into ASTM even, that there should be regional differences.
Hmm.
There should be differences in how we address and do things given the environments that we're asking these materials to work in.
Hmm.
Because there's already regional differences in how the product is executed.
Sure, sure, sure.
It seems a little bit like the man behind the curtain, right? Because it's just the book, and most people just get the book, and it's very technical
Yeah.
as a book goes. And you helped me get on the ASTM working group and as a voting member. But
Yeah.
the one thing I was shocked about was A, how few applicators are on that, and then B, um, how long it takes to make a change and how long it takes for a group of guys in the same industry
Yeah.
to agree on just the most minute words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit. I could talk a little bit. You've been in it much longer than I have. What makes it so difficult to get through those things?
Yeah. Richard, it's a great question. I think a lot of people are perplexed by that. Um, the way ASTM works is that it is a consensus based technical document.
Hmm.
And when you say consensus based, the procedure at ASTM is that if you're a member, you have a right to say no.
Yeah.
And that's any individual member. And that can hold up a ballot request.
One guy.
One no.
That's right.
Now, that no has to have reason for the no
Hmm.
documented. And then that reason for the no by the group at large is either found to be persuasive or non persuasive.
Hmm.
So you can get down to the nuances of a word or a phrase or
Right.
a sentence or where it's in context or is it in the right place? A number of those things. And then everyone has a right to review that and say yes or no. If it's a no, you got to say why it's a no. And
Hmm.
then we have the group's right on the committee to say that makes sense, we agree, or no, that's not persuasive.
Right.
Right.
Okay. And that's voted out.
And that's a long process. That's
And
not a.
and
I mean,
this
that's a.
this is all officially vetted twice a year in May and in November of every year. Now, there is voting that takes place along the way. But the committee at large, that is the C11 committee, which is gypsum plaster
Hmm.
and gypsum assemblies, gets together with other various construction materials ASTM standards at the same time. And then the official committee votes come in and go through at that time. So
Right.
they publish updates twice a year. I remembered early in my career when you would get a 1987 version of the standard, and you'd say, "Oh, well, this must be the current one."
Right.
Well, no, no. In today's world, the standard's updated annually, sometimes twice a year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The key is this: is knowing when it's being adopted by the state you're working in. Okay.
Mhm.
So just a little tidbit for you. The state of Florida may have only adopted a certain version, whereas the state of Alabama may have adopted another version. And you
Right.
have to know the nuances of that so
Mhm.
that you know, because you're going to have to execute the work according to what's in the code. And what's in the code is what's been adopted by the state.
Right.
Okay. So,
And every manufacturer yields to the ASTM. I mean,
yes, if you're in the STM, or you either have an interest in it, what they call, or you're a voting member, and we're voting members on the committee, but we're not. I mean, on the task group, but we're not voting members on the committee. So
well, I mean, in terms of when your technical documents you guys write for construction
yeah,
yield to ASTM. So ultimately, we have to know it.
yeah,
I mean, as
yeah.
as
I mean,
applicators, you got to know the
right.
And
ASTM.
it's best just to know the most up to date version.
Yeah, you got to know. You got to know the
That's
functional one.
highest.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, kind of to that point, when I talk to you about, hey, would you come help me on this, you know, technical committee on AWCI, our
Yeah.
trade association.
Yeah.
I think the intent was, hey, Richard, you know, I'm on the manufacturing side. I can talk about the materials and the systems, but you can apply real world knowledge to that, and it's based on the experience. And
Right.
and I think the two of us together can help give some leadership to that committee, and really start trying to take those standards that we really are judged by,
Yeah.
and how do we break those down to make sure they're working.
Mhm.
And that's really what we worked on. For
Yeah.
example, when we worked on the C1861 one, which is the new standard for plastering accessories that's
Right.
out there, we said, hey, that's a new standard. It's starting to get integrated and used. It has some really good information in it, and we want to make sure the market is aware of that. So together, we worked on that
Yeah.
through the AWCI committee, which is the trade association for our group, and it's called the Association of Wall and Ceiling Contractors International.
Right.
So
And that's really just where AWCI is vital to the industry in general.
yeah,
Getting that information out, helping people. I mean, because it doesn't do any of us any good to have bad stucco on the wall anywhere.
no,
Right.
no,
And so for us, that is one reason that being a part of AWCI is awesome, because you can get that information out to have a certain standard accepted everywhere.
yeah, and we're trying our best. I think the intent of for you and I, as we think about it collectively, how do we take the things that are that kind of preside over and dominate us from a regulation and code compliance standpoint? How do we interpret that in such a way that the contracting of that work, the execution of that, can be done to meet it or
Yeah.
exceed it?
Right.
I will say, you want to humble yourself really quick. Go sit in on one of those CTC meetings. Some of the most confused I've ever been in my life. First year I was in the AWC, I came and sat in on a meeting with you two.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting there thinking, I know absolutely nothing about this industry at all. It's crazy the stats and the knowledge that gets thrown around in those meetings.
I feel like I know a little bit about the industry. And when I sat in on my first ASTM meeting,
Yes.
and these guys started arguing over these minute words and throwing out engineering and codes from Seattle to, I mean, everywhere, it was like drinking out of a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
You realize there are guys out there with so much knowledge. Chris is one of them.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's so much to learn. Even though I've been in it forever, there's still so much to learn.
It's like
in
having
what we
30
do.
professors of the same subject matter in the same room.
And they all are reading the same book and are just on
Different-
opposite ends of the page. Somehow or another, they don't see
Different
the same material.
interpretations.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you got two different parallels going there, right? You got the ASTM, pathway, if
Yeah.
you will, that really kind of drives how stuff gets built,
Mhm.
finished out, and then you got the AWCI pathway, which represents the trade
Right.
association, the contractor focused part of the business,
Right.
and it's trying to normalize some of that technical side of it,
Right.
and try to create some definition around that.
Uh,
So
We are almost becoming the functional arm of the ASTM using AWCI.
yeah.
We're trying to take that technical document, make it a layman's version that you could take and apply to business
Yeah.
and get it done right, is the way I kind of see us
Yeah,
functioning.
and we can move along, at a much faster pace because there is no right of refusal 50 people having to
Yeah.
say yes or
Right.
no. It's really largely Richard and I together looking it through and then vetting it with the executive director for the technical support part, Don
Right.
Pills.
Done.
And then really presenting it to the group at large to say yay or nay, and most of them are supportive of that,
Yeah.
given that. So, whereas at ASTM, you got lots of different stakeholders, right? You
Mhm.
got the consultant
Mhm.
who makes his living on the nuances of fractions of inches.
Yep.
Okay. You got the contracting people who say there needs to be flexibility here. Right?
Right.
You've got the manufacturers who say things have got to be made a certain way or stalled a certain way, right?
Right.
With
And
certain
then
products.
and you've got trade association representation there. Whether it's the Western Wall and Ceiling people, or it's the Texas people, or what have you, or New England or Florida.
Right.
And you've got those all saying, we're advocating for it in a different way. So there's a lot of tension there, and that's
You have
what.
your third rail in there. You have your professional witnesses
Yep.
and engineers who make their reports on those nuances, trying to figure out how to make people wrong to make their cases good. And that to me is kind of the underlying a lot of it is that there's so many different interests within that committee.
Yeah.
It's hard to get everybody to get on that same page.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you're right. AWCI is very easy. It's
Yeah.
just a couple of guys trying to be functional and make it go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think both of them have merit. Whether we
Yeah.
like it or not, ASTM is the law of the land in
Yeah.
terms of building code.
Yeah.
So we have to uh, adopt it, if you will, embrace it to some
Right, yeah.
level. But we also want to find the pathways to do things as correctly as we can.
Yeah.
Because I think, everybody wants to do it right.
Yep.
And do the work correctly and to have it function and work long term. I mean that's part of why we're all in this building business.
Yeah.
We want to have those enduring projects, and certainly stucco has its it's places where it's had problems.
Yep.
I think when you start digging into a lot of the root causes, they're really not so much the cladding itself, but it's the foundations built behind the cladding that may
Mhm.
make a difference. It could be the detailing on the walls that weren't handled correctly. It could be the flashing materials or the sealants that really were not directly part of the overall stucco system, but
Mhm.
had negative implications on how they function.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't just draw any linear lines between if it was this, then it was that. If it was this, then it was that. It's just not that clean and
Right.
defined in terms of what happens and doesn't happen. So
Right.
it is an art.
Mhm.
The business of
Yeah.
stucco is an
Yeah.
art, and it is a science. Okay,
That
so you
is
have
true.
both going on at the same time, and you got to apply both sides of your brain
Mhm.
to doing it, and you got to be committed to making sure your people know how to do it.
Yes.
Which is really the hardest part in terms of running the installation side of the business, the subcontracting side is how do you get the knowledge from the ASTM through someone like us at AWCI, then to your foreman, and then to your guy in the field. It's such a long process, and I know for us, we literally do training every month
Right.
to try to shorten that time from knowledge change to literally hammer on the wall.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that to me is the hard part. And then you have all kinds of other problems that get thrown into the middle, sub labor pools, different things like that. How do you retrain your sub labor every time, make sure it's the way that Simpson knows it has to be done?
Right.
So there are all kinds of small parts and pieces in there. And I think it's one of the things that's unique about what we're now trying to do with AWCI is making it manuals and functional as not just a one little piece, but as a block of how to do
Sure.
stucco. And so
Yeah.
I've enjoyed that part of that
Yeah.
for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, piggybacking on that, tell me what do you see as the main failures you're seeing in the stucco industry right now? What do you see as the main causes of failure?
Um, well, water damage, whether it had anything to do with the stucco or not, it seems like water damage in the building
Hmm.
is often connected to stucco wall
Oh, yeah.
claddings.
Hmm.
Okay. And the way that water damage manifests itself can be either, interior wetness or what have you, degradation of it, whether it be wood or even metal.
Hmm.
Insulation that gets wet and saturated. Um, Walls that get blemished or what have you. You
Hmm.
start breaking the wall back, and oh boy, this thing's bigger than we thought,
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, And there are a number of culprits that could be looked at there and identified. It can also be if it has metal reinforcement as part of the plaster system.
Mhm.
If if that wire isn't covered well, whether it be the diamond sheet or whether it be the welded wire or what have you,
Mhm.
chicken wire, we
Mhm.
call, or woven wire is the
Right.
official term. If it's not covered up, um, you get a ferrous metal with air and water in contact with it, you're going to get oxidation.
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
care if it's galvanized or not. I mean, eventually the zinc coating on the galvanization is going to wear out. Okay, it sacrifices itself. That's the chemistry, and it wears down, and that will start to oxidize, create rust. White rust, which is the sacrificial portion happening,
Mhm.
that turns into red rust, meaning we don't have any more sacrificing on. We're now into the metal, the
Right.
iron.
Yep.
Okay, the iron is what you see oxidizing, the Fe portion
Right.
of the chemistry.
The integrity is leaving
So
quickly.
that's where that happens. Now there are newer materials out there that improve the ability to embed that wire.
Mhm.
The diamond. Sometimes the diamonds can be a little more open. That helps.
Mhm.
You've got to be a lot more intentional with the trowel to teach guys that you got to really push the
Right.
scratch coat in and through to cover it well.
We
It can
call
be
that packing
done
the beads.
and is done.
That's right.
On your beads, corners, casings, controls. I mean, you gotta make sure all that is composite, is married up to each other and connected.
Mhm.
You're mudding it all together into a total assembly, if you will, or a composite system. And again,
Talk
you
about your Structilab
yeah.
and your beads because they're special in the fact that it's a lot easier to embed.
Yeah, and I didn't bring all that with me, but you can go on our website and look at it.
Yeah.
We've kind of developed out a system called the Easy Embedment System,
Yeah.
and the Easy Embedment System is basically it's
It's on the floor by that speaker. Grab a couple of them.
our Structawire lath material, which is not diamond sheets, which is most common, but it's a welded wire roll, very open wire design. It furs really, really well, and the plaster will stick to it when you scratch it and put it out. But when you combine that with the PVC accessories that we've designed the flanges so that the flanges are much more triangular in nature. Oh, thank you.
That's so.
Triangular in nature, like you see there with the triangles on it. Um, that just allows it to embed and cover a lot better. And then when you add that little hump in there,
Yeah.
that really elevates it off the surface. And that's the intent, so that when you put the mud in and you put it through, you can really cover it out.
Mhm.
This is just a little added feature we started putting on casing beads that if you want to kind of have your backer rod install around your joints and your gaps in the wall, but you don't want to have your people have to line all that up on the wall and
Yeah.
keep it straight, the rod's built into the trim.
And I think that's an underrated part too.
Well, people that start to use it start seeing how much more they can quality control their work,
Mhm.
maintain the gap exactly where you want it,
Right.
get the rod where it ought to be so that the sealant is exactly how it ought to be. Sealants perform best when they're the right width with the right side, right? Two
When
side
installed
Right.
properly.
two side adhesions, right?
Right.
This helps facilitate that.
Yeah.
That's right.
So to your point, I do think it's underrated.
Yeah.
People look at it on the front end and go, "Oh, I'm going to have to pay another whatever 15, 20 cents a foot to have the rod in there."
Right.
Well, you're going to put it in
You gotta pay-
anyway
yeah,
if
you
you're
gotta
doing
pay
it
that.
right.
Right.
So do you want to do it yourself in the field, or do you want to build it
And
into
it's
the
gonna
park?
save you a step and be quicker. And
You eliminate the labor.
Yeah.
You eliminate
Yeah.
the labor. So
Yeah, I think that is a unique product.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
we've
we're doing-
installed that and the Structilab system on a lot of projects, and it's just been light years ahead.
Right.
And we're slow to the game for new products. I know that.
We are.
And so
Yeah.
so we're always slow because we just don't like changing new products
Yeah.
ever. I will say we use Structilab in North Carolina on that project up there, and man, I think our Charlotte office probably wouldn't use anything else. They love the roll Structilab,
Right.
and just in its ease and the twin track installation, some of that stuff.
Well, and I
they
think
like
your
it.
people have started to, got the learning curve down now.
Mhm.
It's not steep
Yeah.
like it was. Running rolls on the wall is different than hanging sheets.
That's right. That's
And
right.
once you start to appreciate the roll, it's kind of like hanging wallpaper.
Yeah.
If you can kind of get the concept, I'm going to hang wallpaper. Well, now you can kind of the whole mindset changes, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're getting it tacked up on the top, and you're taking it down the wall. And so you realize, hey, I don't have seams, I don't have laps like I used to, I don't have
Yep.
to staple all that. Those are all weak links in the wall
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
You're pulling those out. You get into some trims like this. Again, the triangles, the humps. This is a control joint, a very controversial part of the wall. You're trying to really marry up that flange with that lath so that you maintain your strength and continuity at that point. This part kind of helps you do that. If you need to wire tie that in, which a lot of people expect that, the hump gives you space to do the wire tying. You can't
Mhm.
do it on a flat flange.
Yeah.
Right.
So just some things that we try to do to improve product design
Yep.
to make it more user friendly in the field.
And I think
That's
user friendly is probably where we see most failures within stucco systems. We old school systems, they work and they're great. A little less user friendly, and we see things like paperback lath. We don't use it at all anymore because we found our guys would lap the papers wrong. For us it was always metal to metal, paper to paper. We don't ever hear that anymore. And so trying to explain that to a guy, if I say, and I can't remember, we had a job the other day where we saw it, we called it, and I'm like metal to metal, paper to paper, and everybody's like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that was a standard saying when I was
Yeah.
coming through.
and you probably heard that from me
Yeah,
at some
yeah,
point
yeah.
along the way
Yeah.
because that's you had to really reemphasize that because of the importance of that.
Right.
When I go out and see a job that they say, "Oh, we're having problems cracking," and I go look at the wall and I see cracks that are 27 inches wide, 97 inches long, and they're squared out
Perfect
on the
squares.
entire building. I went,
Yeah.
Did you guys use paperback lath on this? Yeah,
Yeah.
we did. Okay, well, we got the overlap.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there are some things you can connect the dots on, but I mean, I think overall, you said where are the failures coming from? I think embedment is a big part of that. That's
Mhm.
the scratch coat embedment. You got to cover the wire well. I don't care what wire you're using.
Yep.
You want your interface between your trim pieces to be touching and connected.
Mhm.
Okay. You don't want any paper in between the two of those, no weather barriers getting in the way. Um, you want to tie it all together, whether you staple it down in the right spots or you tie it if it's between your framing. You got to
Mhm.
do that
Mhm.
because if you start having problems and they do forensic work on it and you didn't do that, they're going to point at that.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
Okay. So those are just things that, you got to be thinking about. So, um, I think another thing that's very overlooked that has tremendous value but doesn't get attention is you've got to cure the stucco as it's going on the wall.
100%.
You got to moist cure it.
Yep.
And we do
It
this.
feeds and thrives on hydration of the cement, and you can't scratch it and then brown it and finish it in a day and leave the job and think everything's fine.
So I'm writing a paper on this right now, and I was going to send it to you to probably help me with. But that's one of the things we've run into really extensively over the last couple of years. And so used to when I first started, George would always say, "Curing is the different than drying." And so don't talk to me about curing. We're worried about drying. And that was kind of based on the ASTM. It's got to be rigid enough to take the next coat.
Right.
And so what we've had to do over the last couple of years is instead of looking at rigidness of the coats is pH to see
Yeah.
how much water it is absorbed based on the pH level before we go to the next coat. And so we actually, it wasn't probably 3 or 4 months ago, we sent out pH paper tests
Yeah.
to everybody to make sure they had in their trucks so
Yeah.
they could go test their wall. If it hadn't been very long and they didn't know, we could go test
Yeah.
to make sure we were at 10 or under. And so that's become a much bigger issue. And to me, it's one of those things we talk about the ASTM. The ASTM does not help us in that regard. And most manufacturers don't really help in that regard in terms of what they say is, somewhere between I think most of them are saying 6 days, 7 days, 28-day cure time for cement. So
Right.
there are all these numbers in there, but there's no hard, let me tell you what you need to do. Now it says fog coat when needed. I mean, that's in your appendix.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's all these parts and pieces within there done properly, great system.
Yeah.
Done improperly, you got problems.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things we've been looking at as a company is how do we eliminate problems? And I think the best way we are chasing it right now is pH test the wall before that next coat goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a great example of this. As about 7 years ago, we did the addition to the Orlando International Airport. expansion. It was the whole new terminal,
Mhm.
450 yards long in one direction, 4 stories tall. It had originally been designed with a metal building panel system. That system came back and said, "Hey, this is costly. What can we do in an option?" The city of Orlando said, "Hey, we're in Florida. Could you do stucco?"
Right.
The contractor said, "Oh, I don't know if we can do stucco. Stucco's a challenge to do, particularly on work this big."
Mhm.
Fast forward through that project, again in a diamond mesh sheet lath market, traditional historical diamond mesh. Hensel Phelps, the general contractor,
Mhm.
had been working on the West Coast and had been doing Kaiser Permanente medical facilities.
Mhm.
They're all done in stucco out there. They did it with a bunch of Z furring
Mm.
and insulation in the walls. They did it all horizontal Zs. And they said,
Mm.
"Hey, we're doing it out here. Horizontal Zs, insulation in the wall, continuous insulation, so the metal building panel concept can be kind of maintained. We're running the structural wire lath, the Mega Lath product that has code approval to run it vertical on the framing. That
Mhm.
maintains the perpendicular alignment. You can run it vertical, you can run it down the wall, and then you can plaster over that."
Mhm.
Which turned into the Orlando Airport becoming a CI stucco project, 3-coat stucco, using the easy embedment system, running the welded wire lath vertically across the horizontal Zs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
3-coat 7/8, 2 layers of WRB underneath it. I'm talking basic stuff, grade D asphalt paper.
Yeah.
Basic.
Right.
The right stuff, but still basic. Here we are, fast forward 7 years later. There's not one crack in those walls that are 4 stories tall and 450 yards long.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we say, what was the secret sauce that made that work? We taught that contractor how to put that wire in from square one, had never even seen it till we
Mhm.
started the
Mhm.
work.
Mhm.
Taught him how to do it, lived on the job with him, and said, pay a guy, base level guy, to walk the walls top to bottom with either a hose sprayer or a garden hose and water
Fine
those
coated.
walls. That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
we do. And just have them walk it all day long. You got to switch out, whatever. Just keep them wet.
Yeah.
And we did that through the spring and the summer, and those walls were cured well.
How
And
long did you fog coat these things?
I'm sorry,
How long did you fog coat the walls?
they coated it probably during the construction process. So they fogged the scratch, they fogged the brown,
Right.
then the finish got done, and then they fogged that another like 3 to 5 days.
Okay. I didn't know if you're continuing on
Yeah,
through the summer, but you mean
yeah,
each wall that you just
yeah.
did that process for every wall all the way
Just
through?
kept and just
Yeah.
kept it going, dude.
Yeah.
Floor to floor to floor, back up, go again, floor to floor to floor, back up, floor to floor to floor, just continue to saturate it, keep it. Yes, it's hot in Florida. Yes, a lot of that's going to evaporate, but a lot of it got absorbed for hydration.
Right.
And I don't think most people understand. I know when I was young in the industry and in the field, if you take a hose and you spray a stucco wall at the top, water doesn't run down to the bottom.
Right.
It absorbs faster than that hose pipe can spray water
Can.
for, I mean, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes before water starts really flowing out the bottom of the system.
Yeah.
People don't understand how porous or how much water is needed to hydrate a system.
They do not. They do not.
Because that's always fun. I mean, you've seen it, I know.
Yeah.
It's always shocking to me when a hose is hitting the top of the wall, and I'm like,
Yep.
Where's
where's
the water?
where's the water?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's definitely it's
Yeah.
absorbing it in.
Yeah.
That means cement will take it in, will retain it, will
Mhm.
hold it, but it's used to cure it out, to
Mhm.
hydrate it. And
Yeah.
Right.
and the walls heat up. Literally, like the guy walking the wall with the hose said, "Hey, it's getting hot up here
Yeah.
because the wall's heating up."
Right.
Yeah.
It's a chemical. It's
That's
a
the
Reactions
cement
going.
chemical
cement is a
reactions.
chemical
Exactly right.
set, not a dry.
So, you know, I think the big takeaway there is one, you can do CI stucco. Okay, that's
Mhm.
possible to do it.
Mhm.
Two, you can put a good 7/8 3-coat system on a wall that can function a big wall with
Mhm.
big panels.
Mhm.
We made some amendments to traditional control joint spacing size there to
Yep.
make it match up aesthetically
Mhm.
to kind of meet the architectural needs and still break the panels up, which is part of the code requirements in the
Right.
standard.
Right.
Right.
And we worked together with the city to do all of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And ultimately that turned into a win-win because again, the client's still very happy with the work. The panels are functioning well. Stucco's doing all the right things there. And the next time you go to Orlando,
Yeah.
get out by the international airport and look at those walls.
So,
And
I would say to that end too with stucco. Stucco, we hear all the time, stucco cracks. Okay, I get that. But why it cracks is what's important to us. And I think there's certain things we can do. Fog coating is huge,
Right.
yep,
joints are huge,
yep.
proper installation is huge. But there's so many other um, things going on within a building that can make it crack. And I think that's where we get stuck a lot of times. We get called a building, we look at the crack, and I more often than not say, I don't know that that is a stucco cracking
Yeah,
because of stucco.
yeah.
Is it is it some kind of energy movement through the corner of a window? Is it racking of the building? What's your engineering of your studs?
Mhm.
And years ago, I had a house I built for myself, and I did a slick white stucco on
Okay.
the whole house with fine sand, and we didn't put an expansion joint in the whole house. It never cracked, not
Okay.
one place. But I moved my studs to 2x6s, 12-inch on center,
Okay.
and we let them sit, hung the drywall on the inside. So the wood had time to dry out a little bit. We
Yep.
had all the stress from the inside already hung. And then we do the entire house, 2-story house, white stucco, no joints, no anything, and it never cracks.
Well,
It's
by
still not cracked.
increasing
Yeah,
your, by moving your spacing in, you reduce the deflection.
right,
You loaded the inside of the building, so you didn't have that live load deflection taking place.
Right.
right.
And then you really paid attention to the work you were doing as you were putting it on the outside, and you had your, had that those various properties that we've been talking about
Right.
and done. It's absolutely entirely
It's
able
entirely
to do it.
possible. It just the thing that I think a lot of people miss about stucco as a product is it really is about movement and making sure that movement can't get to the stucco.
Yeah,
Good, caulk joints around the windows becomes vital, and especially the corner of the windows. And that's where we
sure.
see. I would say 85% of the problems we see with buildings,
Yeah,
corner windows,
yeah,
right?
yep.
Either the stucco cracking or the window unit itself having problems.
Well, and that's where your
Yeah.
that's where a lot of your tension is,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you're bringing two planes together. You're
Mm-hmm.
bringing a horizontal and a vertical plane in. You're merging them. Well, I mean, just from a pure, mechanics stress standpoint, the physics say that's a point of stress.
Right.
So you got to be able to manage that corner,
Mm-hmm.
try to relieve that stress off the corner in a number of different ways,
Well,
right?
and you got a header there made to absorb that stress
Right.
and then push it to the side to your corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's just so much there's so
Yep.
much energy hopping down into those corners, and how do you put and that was my the one reason I did it on my own house was that if I was wrong, it would be mine.
Yeah.
But by making the walls stronger, by making sure the windows were isolated, by doing all those other things, it allowed for the stucco not to crack. And so many times I think we get in, especially you get in, not to throw barbs at a sector, but something like a multifamily
Mhm.
where every penny means, something to the developer, the owners on the other side. You end up saying, well, we can go 16-inch centers, maybe 18s with these 2x4s, and then we're shocked when things crack. And I think
Right.
that's the hard part for me with stucco is when a guy sees a stucco crack, it is the stucco sometimes.
Yeah.
But more often than not, it has other things to do with so many other conditions.
Right.
And explaining that to a guy who's angry about a crack
Yeah.
is virtually impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing Richard, we have to try to educate is that, a crack isn't necessarily bad.
Right.
Okay. The size of the crack, where it's located. I mean, stucco is concrete.
Right.
Okay. It's concrete. It's a thin layer of concrete,
Hmm.
but it's reinforced. It has some different properties, but essentially it's concrete. I mean,
Right.
we put joints in concrete driveways
Yeah.
so that we reduce the amount of cracking there.
Right.
We still get some. Okay. None of them are failure in nature. Okay. I
Hmm.
still drive my car across them. They don't, I'm not
Don't
falling
fall
in or
in.
whatever.
Right.
Right. And that's the same way with this. Now,
Mhm.
there are some cracks that start showing up that could potentially manifest into something more significant. You got to
Mhm.
know those. So, but, hairline cracks, cracks in spots that, may not have an impact doesn't mean the wall has failed.
Right.
And I
Right.
am not an advocate of demoing that, tearing that off because I've got a crack.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Right.
So we try to, as a manufacturer, we want to advocate and support people that are looking at things sensibly
Mhm.
and, offer our 2 cents into that. Doesn't mean that we're the letter of the law,
Right.
but we're a voice
That's
and
right.
we
Yeah.
can be a
Yeah.
part of supporting that. And so, those are kind of things we offered our customers as well as, just trying to look at it in its holistic view.
Mhm.
You mentioned you having success on your home. It's because you looked at it all in a holistic view. You saw
That's
the
right.
whole home and took it all into account, as opposed to, let's say, a production home builder or maybe just someone building a house and saying, "Oh, well, you can do this in brick, you can do it in siding, or you can do it
Yeah.
in stucco. What do you want to do?" "Oh, we'll
Yeah.
do it in stucco." "Oh, okay. Well, we're just going to build it the same way we've always built our siding houses, and now we're going to put stucco."
Or more prevalent to what we're seeing a lot of times now is a GC goes and bids the job and it gets an accelerated schedule. But we're not going to wait 2 days now for fog coat we
Right.
can't. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not knocking the GC. They've got a schedule to meet.
Yep.
And you walk in the trailer and you say, hey, pickup truck guys can be done in 3 days,
Yep.
but we're going to fog coat for 2, second coat, fog coat. We'll be done in 9. And they go, whoa,
Yeah. And
what are you
they lose
talking
their
about? You know
brain.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a whole nother side to it. Again, the education of stucco is not very good.
No.
And so we pose our own problems sometimes with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I look up that project we did in Raleigh together. I mean, I think, I look back at that, that was early on,
Yeah.
Griffin just
It's my
getting going.
Yeah.
I
first
mean,
project.
converting that destructive picked you up some days, right? You're
Uh-huh.
able to
Just up
you're
some
able to
days.
move through that segment of the project a little faster than you would have with traditional sheets. So you
Hmm.
picked up a few days there. Obviously, you can't pick up, weeks and weeks
Right.
of
Right.
anything, and that's why it's the urgency of being involved in projects even in the framing process. Even you think, my trade's not even gonna be out here for another 2 months.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter. You need
Right.
to be in on the job meetings or at least getting the notes to
Right.
read what's happening because you may need to be more involved before the GC calls you and said, "I need you out here Monday morning."
That's right.
Mhm.
Well, and I'll say in that project specifically, the GC and us kind of had to learn through some of the multifamily stuff together.
Right.
Because we showed up out there and they had a schedule with the owner, and the schedule was funny. It was an exterior skin schedule that ran independent from the interior, and so we got there and nothing's loaded. And so
Oh, yeah,
from
he
our side,
remembers
we're like,
that.
so we had to work with them on how to load a floor,
Yep.
how to make that project go, and that's just one of those things you run
And
into.
even after working through it, it wasn't properly loaded at the end.
Well, it was hard. It's
But
hard.
but
But
the
they got it done, and we got our product on the
I think
wall, and
that
so it
you
was right.
guys, what you did though is you created awareness, right? You
Mhm.
you 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 put it almost, kind of on record that hey, this matters,
Yeah.
and we need to speak into the process because
Yeah.
it's going to impact what we're doing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I've been by that facility, been by that
Yeah.
project in Raleigh, and I haven't been right up on it, but at least from a
It
bit
looks
far
good.
It still
away,
looks good.
it's good looking work. I mean,
I've been on it. It looks good, and look to that GC's. They did it right. They're just They were doing multifamily, and it just hadn't run into it yet.
Yeah.
And so we kind of had to go educate them. Really at a bad time for us because we went in when we were supposed to start and said, "Wait a second. Now that we're here,
Yeah.
we see this." And so it just became one of those again. So there's educational moments that are really painful.
Yep.
And it's on them for not knowing. It's on us for not teaching. And we should have come together better earlier in the project. And I think that's where we are now as a company. We really stress we got to be in earlier.
Mhm.
We got to sit down earlier. We got to look at what's there earlier. As we go.
Well, I think all of these things you've learned over the years and you've applied to the organization. I mean, I'd like to think that your work today overall is getting executed better because
Mhm.
you are pre-planning in a more significant. You are teaching your new managers that this is an important facet of what we do,
Right.
and
Mhm.
you're trying to apply these best practices into what you're doing, and that ultimately makes sure you have more successful work with less callbacks, right? I mean, that's
I,
where you want to move to.
and I would tell you, just as a company, and this is, I could be biased. I'm not saying I am biased. I could be biased. I think we're running the best system in the country for stucco work.
Yeah.
We now have everything into a hard process, a hard system. We're bringing every manager comes in once a month, and we train them on the system and on the application
Mhm.
and how to pass it down line, how to document it. So that's what we to some level have worked, and unfortunately for some of our clients, it's painful learning on our part and theirs as we've gotten through. But we feel like we've gotten to the point now to where, kind of to your point, we've learned what we can learn, but we do have labor issues in our industry,
Oh,
and
sure.
so our big challenge is our guys don't just have to know it; They got to know it, be able to teach it, be able to track it, be able to quality control it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Our guys that used to walk up and say, "Let me grab my trowel, I'm gonna throw some mud on the wall with you because you're a little slow today." Now we're telling those guys, "Hey, don't ever touch your trowel. I need you to go look at the corner of every window. I need a picture of every casing bead. I need." And so it's just a different world. And we were talking about the other day in our meeting. I'm sitting in a room full of superintendents, and there are a lot of guys not there.
Mm.
Really good guys not there. But one of the reasons is those guys can't really run the systems today because their skills are yesterday. And so, how do we make sure those guys that have such great knowledge from yesterday's skills have moved into today's kind of technology and different job description while keeping those skills?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably our big challenge as a company. I think we've kind of, over the last couple of years, kind of gotten over that hump
Mhm.
with a lot of different things, and managed to keep our culture in the process, which is probably the hardest part for us, is
Yeah.
keeping the culture of the company as we go. But tell me what you see in the terms of labor world.
Yeah, labor is tough because we are all hearing that skilled labor is short in the
Hmm.
market at large.
Hmm.
Um, there is a real push on at the high school level to try to change the mindset of um, the kids coming out of high school to
Hmm.
realize, your next steps may or may not be a 4-year
Yeah.
a college
Yeah.
collegiate degree. Maybe your next steps are more in line with technical training and
Hmm.
school training. And it's taken a long time to change that mindset because
Hmm.
the pathway to success as I grew up as a kid, I remember my father did not go to college. My
Yeah.
father uh, got off work on for his high school graduation from Alabama Power Company.
Wow.
Worked there for 36 years until he retired.
Is it lineman? What do you do?
No, he was in power delivery, and he also did line design.
Huh.
So he did mechanical drawing in high school, and that turned into doing drafting work. So he
Hmm.
was in drafting that ultimately turned it a little bit more overseeing right of ways and stuff like that. More administrative stuff, laying home, but
Yeah.
still a 36-year career there, a very
Hmm.
good
Yeah.
career. That he again got off work on his graduation from high school because he was already employed
Yeah.
there.
That's
Go to that.
great.
So I say all that to say the thing he really emphasized to my brother and I is, hey, you got to go to 4-year college. Why? Because in 1955, when he started that, he started off working at the power company and making okay. Well, these kids that were his peers had gone to college, graduated, perhaps in engineering, started. They were side by side with him, and
Yeah.
within 3 or 4 years, they were past him and moving on up the
Yeah.
Yeah.
system, right? So his view was, hey, you got to go do the college thing, right? I mean, that's an important whatever, however you're going to do that. Fast forward here 30 years later, I don't think that that's the case anymore.
I agree.
Well, I think
I,
it's because so many people did that route that
yeah,
now it's an oversaturated. I mean,
Maybe.
well,
I feel like the master degree is the new bachelor degree.
yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, I think you're kind of, you're in the middle of that transition, if you will, yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, but you had a kind of a different legacy built in. You at least you had hoped that you could be a part of this
Yeah. Yeah.
organization and so forth and so on. So there was kind of a different incentive for you. But I think for others, they're trying to coach kids today in high school. I'm talking about counselors, right? That are giving advice for your next step. To tell kids, hey, don't shortchange the thought
Hmm.
that technical training could be a good thing
Yeah.
because you can learn a skill that's not only relevant but desired and needed, get paid well for it,
Hmm.
and develop out from there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the way to go and potentially transition into maybe going back and getting a bachelor's or
Yeah.
something. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of other ways of doing it. And for the first time this year, I have driven into my neighborhood, and you know how they put the banners up in the neighborhood you're coming in?
Mm.
Congratulations to
Yeah.
these kids
Yeah.
that are
Yeah. Yeah.
finishing. We've got 10 or 15 kids on the banner. 3 of the kids on the banner said, "Go into technical
Trades.
school.
Oh
Good
wow.
for them.
Go into
Yeah. Good
technical
for
school."
them.
So I would tell you my micro moment. I tell everybody all listening, micro. The trades are great, and right now, entry level pay into the trades is equivalent to entry level into your standard industries.
Oh yeah.
And look, if you're going to go be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you got to get your bachelor's. There's no doubt about it. There's certain educations, higher degrees that require that. But in terms of you're going to get a business degree or some kind of normalized degree, the trades, you don't go into debt. And so you have no debt to crawl out of, and you make the same starting pay with great upside potential.
Yeah.
And so I think our society in general is now looking at that. And look, I think I mean, I really do think guys like Mike Rowe help change that.
Yeah.
I'm with ABC. I'm on the board of ABC in Birmingham. It's a great group of guys, and I believe they actually have teamed up with Mike Rowe to encourage everyone to get into the trades across, and he's nationally.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but now I see it even in kids in these schools, high school kids coming out. There's a program in Birmingham. It's awesome, training kids for free to get into the trades.
That's a good program too here in
It's a
Birmingham.
great trade. Now, I will say this though: the one thing that is a little surprising is how few high schools have any trades programs in them anymore, or even push trades.
No.
And I think that's one of the things we got to go back and correct.
Yeah.
Is trade schools. I mean, used to you had shop was one of the classes. You had
Sure.
a big shop out back with all
Sure.
the machines, and so I went to a high school that was not big on the trades at all, but we had shop. I rebuilt a lawnmower engine as part of shop.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I mean, back when I was finishing high school in 1982, I mean, shop meant you took the masonry class. Learn how to lay block.
Right.
Oh, by the way, we're going to learn how to weld. We're
Yeah.
going to learn how to do
Right.
sheet metal. And of course, there's this mindset that that was kind of shunned. Oh man,
Right.
I don't want to do that. That means you couldn't go, do the white collar job. Well,
Right.
white collar job is becoming few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
And this new artificial intelligence that's evolving and coming in now is going to, really, really put the brakes on a lot of that. What used to have been white collar work, right? So I really see this shift happening. It's not going to be immediate, but there's definitely in the next 15 to 20 years, there's going to be a stronger push to that. I think more kids are going to kind of let down the embarrassment that they may feel with that and say, hey, I got to go make a living.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they're going to go the trade and they're going to see that it worked really nicely. I
works,
mean,
yeah.
I will tell you today, Clark Dietrich's one of our biggest driving spaces right now is we are supplying data centers. Okay.
Mhm.
We all know the data center work's going on.
Oh, yeah.
As AI grows. I mean, data centers is the number one area of building in the United States
Right.
today and has been for the last 18 months and
No
it's
doubt.
projected to be for the next 24 to 36 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Building them as fast as they can get them out.
It's not enough stucco in data centers. Let's be clear.
There is no stucco on them. But the point is the electrician trade,
Mhm.
the plumbing and mechanical, these are the things that both provide power as well as cool the data centers.
Yeah.
Those trades are all in high demand with
Oh, yeah.
six-figure pay
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
to get into that space. If you're trained and learned, meaning you've gone
Yeah.
through your journeyman process, you become an apprentice to journeyman, and you're out, you're in now. So, and that's like a 2-year process. It's not
Mhm.
like,
Right.
forever and ever to get through that. So if you're reasonably competent and can go through that through a unionized process, you can come out on the other end. So on the plastering and lathing side, the OPCIMA, which is the Operative Plasters and Masonry Trades, is
Mhm.
the National Trade Association for both the masonry and stucco. They both fall into that group. They're teaching EIFS today there.
Mhm.
EIFS is part of that, which is kind of the, the insulation focused, finish that looks like stucco. You guys do that, I know, and that's part of it. But they're trying to evolve those trades. So
Mhm.
kind of coming back to your early point, what about all the shortage in trades? I think you're seeing building construction that's being done today that is trying to leverage into what are more trades that are more available.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, that means why is siding grown so much? Because I can teach a guy to run a chop saw and put a
Yeah.
put a stick, put a tape measure on it and cut siding. It's a lot harder to teach them how to lad and
Stucco.
plaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Okay. So that's made a huge dent in our space. Now, they're going to have their shortcomings and failures too.
Sure.
May not manifest as quickly, but it will manifest because it's all being done, in the field. So,
Yeah. I would say I interpret what you just said as all the smart guys are doing stucco.
That's
Is that
where
is
it's gonna
that?
end up, exactly right. But what it does for ghosts like Simpson, what it
Yeah.
does for you guys is because you have a competency there and you're willing to work, in a wide scale basis, geography wise,
Mhm.
you're gonna be in demand because there's not that many people that know it well and have these processes put together like you
Right.
guys
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
to go out and say, "We can do this in Alabama, we can do it in Mississippi, we can do it in Louisiana, we can do it in Florida, we can do it in Georgia,
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
do it. We can do it because we have a system that can support it,
Yeah.
right? So most people, it's an afterthought. Oh yeah, we can do that. I got some guys that did it 10 years ago, so forth and so on, and so be it.
Yeah.
But you can actually do it and really be able to sit at that table saying we have a competency in this.
Mhm.
Right.
And so for the places where people still want to use stucco, it's still going to be in demand.
Yeah.
Right.
Albeit a lot of small jobs. I think we were in 40 states 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
probably our largest year we've ever had in terms of
Yeah.
states hit.
And
Geography.
it's hard to run work when you're that spread out. You got to
Mhm.
be
Yeah.
very focused on
Gotta have a great
and
process.
pay attention to things, right? And on top of things.
Yeah.
So I had a manager one time tell me the best work to do is the work that's closest to home.
Yeah.
It is. It is. Unfortunately for us, Alabama's a brick place.
It is.
So
You're right. You're
being
right.
based out of Birmingham makes it difficult in
Yep.
terms of getting stucco revenue.
Yep. Yep.
And we got to do it. Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're right. The trades becoming a big deal for young people will help us a bunch.
Yeah.
They really will.
I do believe that.
Yeah.
And so, interesting. All right, let's see. What else you got? Griffin, you got any questions?
Not really. No. It's been a fun
Griffin-
conversation.
So
though.
I do have one.
Griffin's all studied up.
Yeah, he's
ready to
also.
go.
I do have
Okay,
one question. One other thing I want to jump into with you because I think to me, it is again one of the strengths you've shown throughout your entire career, and I changed the way we ran our company about 6 or 7 years ago to focus far more on it, which is leadership.
Mhm.
You've always had a strong leadership role in what you do. I think us as a company, we always just kind of ran as a small company, which meant you did lead and you led here and there, but I didn't put the value on leadership that I do now with people. Talk about leadership, your own personal leadership, but also the value of that in your organization
yeah.
as it goes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Richard. I think leadership is earned.
Hmm.
I also think leadership is a byproduct of uh, serving others
Hmm.
and experience,
Hmm.
and also a vision for where you want things to go.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
got to have vision. Okay, if you are a show up person and tell me what we're doing today, that's not leadership.
Yep.
Leadership is, hey, I've got this on the books. Let me start preparing and getting ready. So preparation is a big part of leadership.
Hmm.
Prepared. Secondly, is are you well trained? Have you self taught yourself if that's what's necessary? Have you gained access to resources, whether it be people, whether it be books, whether it be documentation, what have you, to learn and understand your craft or your skill?
Hmm.
Okay. Number three, you have to have a view of where you think things ought to go. And that's kind of that leadership piece to have the vision.
Hmm.
And then thirdly, you got to be able to articulate that. You
Hmm.
got to be able to communicate that in an attractive way that makes people say, "Yeah, I see that. I want to get
Hmm.
on board with that."
Yeah.
I think you have
That
that
passion
secret.
part.
You have that secret sauce. I mean, you said, for me, that the magnetic piece of that is my passion.
Hmm.
I love it. I have that reputation at Clark Dietrich today. Oh man,
I
here
bet.
comes Chris.
But
He's going to
your
be bringing it.
your passion bleeds into your team because I was lucky enough to be on the emerging leaders with 2 people within your team, and they have the same passion because it
Yeah.
bleeds down into your team.
Yeah, and I think for us as in leadership roles, we are setting the example. Okay, if you're excited about what you're doing, you're ready to be at work. You're saying, "Hey, let's roll, let's get it," and you're
Yeah.
you're going "Oorah, let's go
Yeah.
after it." I
Yeah.
mean, even sometimes you don't feel like it. It's part of saying, "Hey, I'm with you, and I'm working alongside you." The one thing I've always tried to emphasize as I've worked is, "Hey, here's my expectation of you, but you're not going to have to do this alone.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
going to be side by side with you, and I'm going to be here to
Yeah.
help you. And I think that is such a big part of people getting confident. If I know I've got somebody to fall back on, lean into, get my questions answered, and it's an open ended, come anytime you want to ask, and I'll get a response. Right? I mean, I think about even Griffin and I. I get a text.
Yeah.
You know, he knows he's going to get an answer, and
Right.
he's not going to have to wait all day and tomorrow to
Right.
get it.
Right.
Right, right.
Right? That's important in our business.
Mhm.
People want a response, and they want it in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
It keeps you in the game
Right.
Mhm.
at whatever level that is.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if I tell you, no, we can't do this, but you can do this. It's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
You give me some guidance, some direction. That's all I've needed. You know what? And that keeps me on his speed dial.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of what I try to do with my people too,
Mhm.
internally. When we finish up here today and I wrap up with you guys, shake your hand and walk out the door, first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, who's called me? What
Right.
have I got hot on the
Yep.
list now that I got to check out? Because, you know, I'm usually not off the grid for 2 or 3 hours,
Right,
right?
Right.
right,
Right.
right.
And people can count on that,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and both at the customer level, at the internal level, what have you. So for me, leadership is being consistent,
Mhm.
believing in what you're doing, and having a vision for where you want to go, being able to communicate that to your group at large,
Mhm.
and living out what you say
Mhm.
and do.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And that's how I built my career. The other thing is, Richard, and you know this, is we live in the mundane of life. Okay, every day is not you know the mountaintop high, and every day is not I'm in the lowest of the valley.
Right.
It's in between the two of those, right? And
Mhm.
that's kind of where we roll. We got to be uh, at peace with rolling in the mundane,
Mhm. Yeah.
and then when the good stuff hits, we can cheer it, and when the bad stuff hits, we could take it and absorb it and roll on.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the jobs as the owner is to absorb the bad and keep you got to keep pushing. You got to keep growing and cheering as you go. But I would say one thing I've found about teaching leadership here, which has been interesting, and we've kind of really started focusing on it more, is I actually see it as one of the best ways, A, to grow the company, but also um, give our guys the skills for a better life.
Yeah.
Because many times you find the problems we have within the company, the guys and all of us have at home. And so a lot of times when we're addressing leadership within the company, whether it be communication, um, how we handle stress, how we handle problems, how we lead through those things is a direct correlation to our lives away from the company.
Mhm.
And so it's one of the things that I kind of, as we got down the road, I probably got 6 or 8 months into it as we started stressing. I started realizing, man, I need this for me in my life, and then I think these guys do too. And so we kind of talk about that now openly in a lot of our meetings, which is, hey, we're gonna talk about this topic, this leadership topic, and I think you might find it applies across the board.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
so anyway, it's been I've found that focus really to be a game changer for us.
Yeah. I think the more you live your life, all facets of your life in a holistic manner. I mean,
Hmm.
the guy that you see here today is the guy that's at home,
Mhm.
you
Hmm.
know, sitting on the back deck and,
Right.
grilling something on the grill,
Right.
or the same guy that, is with my peers or doing something with them. I mean, that consistency of that you're the same kind of person. I think
Hmm.
people see that and they observe that, and they want to know that. And um, so those are the kind of things that ultimately create confidence, believe in you, create trust. I mean, these are things that you hope to be able to live that daily in the mundanes of life,
Yeah.
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that when the urgencies come along, whatever they are, high or low,
Hmm.
you can weather through those,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and deal with those. But I look at you, from a leadership standpoint. I mean, I so admire the work you do with Woodlawn High School
Yeah.
and the kids there.
Yeah.
Because you're caring about something bigger than yourself, right? You
Yeah.
care about something. You're able to apply a skill. Hey, I can help them with track and field. it's pro bono,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
paid to do this. I'm doing it because I want to. And those kids see you showing up every day or whenever they're in session or
Every
into
day.
work.
Yeah.
They go, wow, this guy actually does care about what
You're
we're
right.
doing. And
Right.
oh, by the way,
Right.
he knows a little bit about racing and running and all of that.
Yeah.
And wow, this is special, and it takes time to do that. And so, I've done that over my career as well,
Yeah.
tried to invest into things outside of my profession, to build something bigger than myself. And
Yeah.
that's what you do. And I admire that.
Well, thank you. And I actually have threatened to bring those guys on for a podcast, and we won state in the 4x1 this year, and I'm thinking about bringing them in, just letting them have a little fun
Right.
and
On the
tell their
yeah.
story. I
Yeah.
mean, they're great guys, and man, just that's been a blessing to me,
Oh,
and frankly, to me, I actually view that as Simpson's gift back.
yeah.
I mean, Simpson gives me the ability to go do that. And so a lot of our guys bust their butt every day in the field, which allow me to take that hour and a half or whatever it is a day to go out there and train those guys. Now, in the weekend race and all that stuff, all that is kind of to me, um, just kind of paying forward what Simpson as a company has done, not really
Yeah.
just for me. I'm
Yeah.
just get to be the hands of it, which sometimes is fun and
Yeah.
sometimes it's not so
Yep.
much fun.
Sure. Sure.
But that
Sure.
is fun. That is
Yeah.
fun.
Um,
All right, go ahead. It's
let's
your
yeah.
last three
I was gonna
questions
say
you
let's
always
wrap
give.
up.
Okay.
It's always fun getting people's crazy stories. Everyone in construction has their one crazy story. I was in a trailer one time. This happened. What comes to mind when you think back on one of the craziest job site stories you can think
Wow. Crazy job site stories, man. Um, I've had a few
of? Right.
over
Yeah.
the
I bet.
years. I have. Usually, they're built around intense moments, right?
Right.
Aren't they? I mean,
Yep.
job site stories are
Hmm.
around intense moments, and I think as I look back, I go, okay, probably the one of the most outrageous ones that I was really out of my comfort zone in was I was working at Carboline with their coatings product, and we had contracted to supply a project in Puerto Rico,
Mm.
and we were building a pharmaceutical facility down there. And pharmaceutical facilities are built with clean room criteria, so everything's got to be clean, got to be dust free. Well, that's it's fire rated steel. It's got to be an NMS paint. And so I was the regional director for that segment of the business at that time. Puerto Rico was in my space, so I had got to go to Puerto Rico. So I'm going to Puerto Rico. Like, oh, this is gonna be fun,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to Puerto
Vacation.
Yeah.
Rico. I mean, this is kind of I've got I'm going down on the company ticket, and I'm going to work down here. And so I took my wife with me down there. Hey, why not?
Right. Right.
And we stayed in a kind of a resort area just out from San Juan. All good. And the uniqueness of that place, right? I mean, you got huge iguanas just walking around all over the place in front of you, and you're like, if this thing jumps up in my lap, it's going to crush me, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
big, right? So you got all that going on. So I'm the next morning I get up, I go out, I head to the job site there, adjacent to the San Juan area where these pharmaceutical companies are, and they're big U.S. companies. I mean,
Yeah.
Eli Lilly,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Glaxo. I mean, big, huge names. And
Right.
we go into this site. Well, we get in there and sit down, and people are really, really uptight. Right? Here's the guy. He's really uptight. The problem is they're uptight, all speaking Spanish,
Mm.
and I'm like,
No hablo.
no, I'm like, no español. I'm like,
Uh,
where is my interpreter here? Right? I mean, I got to have somebody navigate this space. And I mean, it is, you know, this and that. I mean, I didn't know what they were saying, but I knew it wasn't good. And I'm like, I got to have some interpreting. Thankfully, my local person eventually showed up because nobody's on time down there.
right.
And they showed up and started to interpret for me what the issues were and the challenges. And we were able to talk through those, calm people down,
Right. Right.
and get get the temperature in the room down a bit. One thing about the Latin culture is it can be
A little
pretty
spicy.
intense,
Little
can be kind
spicy.
of intense.
Spicy.
So we brought that down a bit, got it cooled off. Um, Before they got there, I thought I may just have to bail out the window. I mean, because this thing is really, folks are getting closer and they're getting louder,
Yeah.
and I don't know that I'm, ready for the fight here. So that was probably a very outrageous
That's
space for
crazy.
me, realizing, okay, I first got to learn. I've got to communicate here with these
Right.
folks, and without that translator there, it would have been a bad scene
Yeah.
because we did have some real challenges that had to get worked through
Right.
in terms of curing and drying, and we
Yeah.
got it, all that goes with that product category. And folks just weren't aware of it, didn't understand it, and I needed that to help me make that happen. And it's that made the difference. Prior to that, it was a hot burning fire,
Yeah.
right?
I
And
can't
you
imagine a job
yeah,
site trailer
yeah.
fight when you don't even
Yeah.
speak the language.
Well, just again, that experience of working in, really immersed Latin culture,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and trying to
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
through that. That was a unique experience. And, on one side, oh, we're having fun. It's a resort. We got
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
iguanas. We're chilling out down here with the mojito, and then the next minute, oh my gosh, the cartel may come here and take me out. So it was just
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really funny. We were able to eventually go on that trip with a little R&R added in. Went up to the only rainforest in the
Mm.
United States that's connected to the
It's in
United
Puerto
States.
Rico.
It's in Puerto Rico.
Oh
Huh.
wow. I didn't know that.
The
That's cool.
only travel. It's at the top of one of their mountains there. That's
That's
high
awesome.
enough to be classified as a rainforest. So the only United States territorial rainforest is in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Very
That's
cool.
very
Very
cool.
So
cool.
pretty neat.
All right. That's it.
No, no. You got your next two questions. What's the last book you read?
Ooh, last book I read. Well, I'm in the middle of one now that is just really compelling, and it was recommended by my next door neighbor, and it's called The Pillars of the Earth.
Huh.
The Pillars of the Earth,
Let's
and
hear.
it is it's a very long book. I mean, it's a big challenge to me because it's like 1,700
Oh my
pages.
gosh.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Brothers
And
I'll be
Karamazov.
reading that.
and there's no illustration in this thing, right? I
Right.
feel like I'm reading War and Peace or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, just a really. But what I love about it is the writer, a guy named Ken Follett, is an incredible writer, and he really can paint these pictures so well. And the story is about the 1500s
Mm.
in England, where the Masons were building these cathedrals,
Interesting.
Huh.
and the storylines behind the different people that were involved in building these cathedrals, and how the monks really drove the funding of building these
Huh.
Is
cathedrals.
this nonfiction or is it
It's fiction.
fictional,
It's fictional history.
historical fiction?
It's historical fictional history. It's
Huh.
called The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett.
Interesting.
And I've been reading it both in the hard copy, which is like a brick. I mean, it's a big,
Right.
huge brick,
Mm-hmm.
not easy to carry.
From
So I
defense.
so I put it on my Kindle for my travels,
Mm-hmm.
and I could carry it. And I down to 15 or 20 pages of it last night. But it's got really great personal, stories, like multiple characters, and they're all kind of converging. And I can see now how he's bringing these various stories are starting to
Can
come
come together.
together. And this guy, they're building these cathedrals, and what's great about it and why she recommended it, she knows I love building in general, and
Yeah.
and just the history of that, and just
Mhm.
realizing that they would mine these stones and bring them through a river, hundreds of miles to
Yeah.
where they were trying to build this stuff out. And
Yeah.
just how these people did this and how they built it, and how were they able to design the architecture to ultimately build cathedrals. And you just don't realize how these structures like Westminster Abbey and things like that in England, there's a whole myriad of these
Yeah.
cathedrals all over Europe,
Yeah.
really. And
Yeah.
many of them were built in that era, 13 to 1500s,
Mm-hmm.
and they were built hand by hand with stone.
That's
I mean,
incredible.
just the
Sounds
work.
like it'd be
So
a good movie
it's
too.
it's a great story. It's drama, but
Yeah.
it's also history together. And I'm about halfway done. In fact, my Kindle says you're 51%.
Wow.
You're on page 980, and you're at 51%.
Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
So it's a great read. I encourage you to
All right.
check
Well,
that out.
that'll definitely go on the list. All right. The other question we ask everybody is, if you had to give a TED talk today, and it can't be on lathing, and on something,
Yeah,
what would it be on?
TED Talk. I think Richard, I would say perseverance,
Yeah.
to persevere. Um, Kind of like we were talking about really kind of acknowledging where you live your life every day.
Hmm.
Realize that life's not what you see on your phone.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay,
Right.
that we've got to remind ourselves of that. I know that I can say that to you, but then pick up the phone this afternoon and I think, oh, look at what all they're all doing.
Right.
They're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's really not everybody's everyday life,
That's their
right?
highlight reel.
Right.
Yeah.
So we really what counts is how you live day to day, the decisions you make day to day, how you both invest long term plays and in short term plays.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
to do good things, and then ultimately just how you respond to things that happen.
Yeah.
I don't always do that well. Okay, I don't make the best
Sure.
responses,
Yeah.
and thankfully my wife reminds me what's important there and how to respond. And just to have that mindful way of thinking. You need to be mindful of the here and now.
Hmm.
Today, coming over here, I went, okay, I want to do a nice job for Simpson.
Yeah.
Richard's a friend. And Griffin, and I want this to be valuable
Yeah.
for what you're trying to do. And
Yeah.
um, you know, what can I do and say that really supports what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Intentional living.
Being
I love
intentional.
that.
So
Listen,
yeah,
you're talking to a guy that lives on the Lord's grace and mercy. It's the only
yeah,
thing that gets me through.
yeah, yep.
Listen, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much. Thank you just for the friendship and the mentoring and everything you've meant to my career and me.
Thank you, Richard.
First off, and thanks for
Yeah.
joining us here today.
Well, it's been nothing but a pleasure. I'm so glad I was able to come over to Birmingham, be
Yes.
here
Yes.
with you,
Yes.
and see Griffin.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm thankful for our friendship over the
Yeah.
years. You just don't realize how it can
How-
endure. For
Yeah.
those years, but it means more to me today than it did when I first threw the UL book at you. Okay.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thanks a lot. And we'll probably do it again one day because there's still so much more for us to cover and
Yes.
just in general. So
Fantastic.
thank you
Thank you.
very much. Thanks, Clark Dietrich, for letting you come
Yeah.
at that as well. I know you get their permission and they've been great to us as well.
Yes.
So
Wonderful.
Thank you for watching episode 7 with Chris Little. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Anything you do helps us grow. Thanks.